Chapter 2: What Makes Us Tick? This is the Leaders Are Readers Club recording. How Will You Measure Your Life? By Clayton Christensen. It's impossible to have a meaningful conversation about happiness without understanding what makes each of us tick. When we find ourselves stuck in unhappy careers and even unhappy lives, it is often the result of a fundamental misunderstanding of what really motivates us. The importance of getting motivation right. When I was running CPS Technologies, a company that I founded with several MIT professors early in my career, I had an epiphany of sorts about what motivates us. One summer Saturday, we had a company picnic for our employees' families in our park near our laboratories. There was nothing fancy about it, but it was a welcome opportunity to get three-dimensional perspective of our colleagues' lives. I walked to the periphery of the group after everyone had arrived, just to figure out that who belonged to whom. Out the corner of my eye, I saw Diana, one of our scientists, and her husband playing with their two children. Diana had a key position in the lab. She was an analytical scientist. Actually, a chemist. Her job was to help the other scientists use our company's specialized equipment so that they could know what elements were present in the compounds they created or with which they were working. By definition, waiting until the results came back from the tests, Diana ran occasionally frustrated some of the 20 or so scientists on the team, each of whom needed his or her test run as the highest priority. But it frustrated Diana even more. She wanted to help everyone, but as a startup, we couldn't buy unlimited equipment. So there were limited numbers of machines and only 10 hours in Diana's workday. As a result, her days were often filled with turf battles. But that's not what I saw at that moment. Instead, I was impressed by the love Diana and her husband clearly shared with their two children. Seeing her there, I began to gain a perspective of Diana in the full context of her life. She wasn't just a scientist, she was a mother and a wife whose mood, whose happiness, and whose sense of self-worth had a huge impact on her family. I began to think about what it must be like in her house in the morning, as she said goodbye to her family on her way to work. Then I saw Diana in my eyes as she came home to her family 10 hours later, on a day that had gone really bad. She felt underappreciated, frustrated, and demeaned. She learned little that was new. That moment, I felt like I saw how her day at work negatively affected the way she interacted in the evening with her husband and their young children. This vision in my mind then fast-forwarded to the end of the other day. On the one hand, she was so engaged by the experiment she was doing that she wanted to stay at work. But on the other, she was so looking forward to spending time with her husband and children that she clearly wanted to be at home. On that day, I saw her driving home with greater self-esteem, feeling that she had learned a lot, having been recognized in a positive way for achieving valuable things, and played a significant role in the success of some important initiatives for several scientists and for the company. I felt like I could see her go into her home at the end of the day with her replenished reservoir of self-esteem that profoundly affected her interaction with her husband and those two lovely children. And I also knew how she feel going into work the next day, motivated and energized. It was a profound lesson. Do incentives make the world go around? 6 years later, as a new professor, I was standing at the front of a Harvard classroom teaching technology and operations management, a required first year course for all of our MBA students. In the discussion that day about the case study on a big materials company, a student recommended a way to resolve a conflict with another of their most critical customers. She suggested the company assign a key engineer, Bruce Stevens, to this project, in addition to his a better theory of motivation. The other answer lies in a deep chasm about how the concepts of incentives and motivation relate to each other. There are two broad camps on this question. Back in 1976, two economists, Michael Jensen and William Meckling, published a paper that has been continued to memory by those in the first camp. The paper, which has been one of the most widely cited of the past 3 decades, focused on a problem known as agency theory or incentive theory. Why don't managers always behave in a way that is in the best interest of shareholders? The root cause, as Jensen and Meckling cite, is that people work in accordance with how you pay them. The takeaway was that you have to align the interests of executives with the interests of shareholders. That way, if the stock goes up, executives are compensated between, and it makes both shareholders and executives happy. Although Jensen and Meckling didn't specifically argue for huge pay packages, they're thinking about what causes executives to focus on some things and not others is financial incentives. Indeed, the drive toward top performance has been widely used as an argument for skyrocketing compensation under the guise of aligning incentives. It's not just my students who have become believers in this theory. Many managers have adopted Jensen and Meckling's underlying thinking, believing that when you need to convince others that they should do one thing and not another, you just need to pay them to do what you want them to do. When you want them to do it, it's easy. It's measurable. In a sense, you are able to simply delegate management for a formula. Even parents can default to thinking that external rewards are the most effective way to motivate the behavior of what they want from their children. For example, offering their children a financial reward as an incentive for every A on a report card. One of the best ways to probe whether you can trust the advice that a theory is offering you is to look at anomalies, something that the theory cannot explain. Remember our story about birds, feathers, and flight? The early aviators might have seen some warning signs in their rudimentary analysis of flight had they examined what their beliefs or theories could not explain. Ostriches have wings and feathers but can't fly. Bats have wings but no legs, no feathers, and they are great flyers. And flying squirrels have neither wings nor feathers, but they get by. The problem with a principal agent or incentives theory is that there are powerful anomalies that it cannot explain. For example, some of the hardest working people on the planet are employed in nonprofits and charitable organizations. Some work in the most difficult conditions imaginable, disaster recovery zones. Countries gripped by famine and flood. They earn a fraction of what they would if they were in the private sector. Yet it's rare to hear of managers on nonprofits complaining about getting their staff motivated. You might dismiss these workers as idealists, but the military attracts remarkable people too. They commit their lives to serving their country, but they are not doing it for financial compensation. In fact, it's almost the opposite working in the military is far from the best paid job you can take. In many countries, including the United States, the military is considered a highly effective organization. And a lot of people who work in the military get a deep sense of satisfaction from their work. How then do we explain what is motivating them if it's not money? Well, there is a second school of thought, often called two-factor theory or motivation theory that turns the incentive theory on its head. It acknowledges that you can pay people to want what you want over and over again, but incentives are not the same as motivation. True motivation is getting people to do something because they want to do it. This type of motivation continues in good times and bad. Frederick Herzberg, probably one of the most incisive writers on the topic of motivation theory, published a breakthrough article in the Harvard Business Review focusing on exactly this. He was writing for a business audience, but what he discovered about motivation applies equally to us all. Herzberg notes the common assumption that job satisfaction is one big continuous spectrum, starting with very happy on one end and reaching all the way down to absolute miserable on the other, is not actually the way the mind works. Instead, satisfaction and dissatisfaction are Instead, satisfaction and dissatisfaction are separate, independent measures. This means, for example, that it's possible to love your job and hate it at the same time. Let me explain. This theory distinguishes between two different types of factors: hygiene factors and motivation factors. On one side of the equation, there are the elements of work that, if not done right, will cause us to be dissatisfied. These are called hygiene factors. Hygiene factors are things like status, compensation, job, security, work conditions, company policies, and supervisory practices. It matters, for example, that you don't have a manager who manipulates you for his own purposes, or who doesn't hold you accountable for things over which you don't have responsibility. Bad hygiene causes dissatisfaction. You have to address the fix bad hygiene to ensure that you are not dissatisfied in your work. Interestingly, Herzberg asserts that compensation is a hygiene factor, not a motivator. As Owen Robbins, a successful CFO and the board member who chaired our compensation committee at CPS Technologies, once counseled me, compensation is a death trap. The most you can hope for as CEO is to be able to post a list for every employee's name and salary on the bulletin board, and hear every employee say, "I sure wish I were paid more, but darn it, this list is fair." Clayton, you might feel like it is easy to manage this company by giving instant incentives or rewards to people. But if anyone believes that he is working harder but is being paid less than another person, it would be like transplanting cancer into this company. Compensation is a hygiene factor. You need to get it right. But all you can aspire to is that employees will not be mad at each other and the company because of compensation. This is an important insight from Herzberg's research. If you instantly improve the hygiene factors of your life, you're not going to suddenly love it. At best, you just won't hate it anymore. The opposite of job dissatisfaction isn't job satisfaction, but rather an absence of job dissatisfaction. They're not the same things at all. It is important to address hygiene factors such as a safe and comfortable working environment, relationship with managers and colleagues, enough money to look after your family. If you don't have these things, you will experience dissatisfaction with your work. But these alone won't do anything to make you love your job. They will just stop you from hating it. The balance of motivators and hygiene factors. So what are the things that will truly deeply satisfy us? The factors that will cause us to love our jobs. These are what Herzberg's research calls motivators. Motivation factors include challenging work, recognition, responsibility, and personal growth. Feelings that you are making a meaningful contribution to work arise from intrinsic conditions of the work itself. Motivation is much less about external prodding or stimulation and much more about what's inside of you and inside of your work. Hopefully, you've had experiences in your life that have satisfied Herzberg's motivators. If you have, you'll recognize the difference between that and an experience that merely provides hygiene factors. It might have been a job that emphasized doing work that was truly meaningful to you, that was interesting and challenging, that allowed you to grow professionally, or that provided opportunities to increase your responsibility. Those are the factors that will motivate you to cause you to love what you're doing. It's what I hope my students hold out for because I know it can make the difference between dreading or being excited to go to work every day. The lens of Herzberg's theory gave me real insight into the choices that some of my classmates made in their careers after we graduated. While many of them did find themselves in careers that were highly motivating, my sense was that an unsettling number did not. Is it that people who seem to have the world at their feet end up making deliberate choices that leave them feeling unfulfilled? Herzberg's work shed some light on this. Many of my peers had chosen careers using hygiene factors as the primary criteria. Income was often the most important of these. On the surface, they had lots of good reasons to do exactly that. Many people view their education as an investment. You give up good years of your working life, years you would otherwise be making a salary, compounding that is often the need to take a big loans to finance your time at schools. Sometimes, while supporting your young families, as I did, you know exactly how much debt you'll have the minute you graduate. Yet it was not lost on me that many of my classmates had initially come to school for very different reasons. They written their entrance essays on their hopes for using their education on to tackle some of the world's most vexing social problems, or their dreams of becoming entrepreneurs and creating their own businesses. Periodically, as we were all considering our post graduation plans, we try to keep ourselves honest, challenging each other. What about doing something important or something you really love? Isn't that why you came here? Don't worry. Came back the answer. This is just for a couple of years. I'll pay off my loans, get myself in a good financial position, then I'll go chase my real dreams. It was not an unreasonable argument. The pressure we all face, providing for our families, meeting our own expectations, and those of our parents and friends, and for some of us, keeping up with our neighbors, are tough. In the case of my classmates and my many graduating classes since, manifested manifested actually this manifested itself in taking jobs as bankers, fund managers, consultants, and plenty of other well regarded positions. For some people it was a choice for passion. They genuinely loved what they did and those jobs worked out well for them. But for others, it was a choice based on getting a good financial return on their expensive degree. By taking these jobs, they managed to pay their student loans. Then they got their mortgages under control and their families in comfortable financial positions. But somehow, that early pledge to return to their real passion after a couple of years kept getting deferred. Just one more year, or I'm not sure what else I would do now. All the while their incomes continued to swell. It wasn't too long, however, before some of them privately admitted that they had actually begun to resent the jobs they'd taken for what they now realized were the wrong reasons. Worse still, they found themselves stuck. They'd managed to expand their lifestyle to fit the salaries they were bringing in, and it was really difficult to win that back. They made choices early on because of the hygiene factors, not true motivators, and they couldn't find their way out of that trap. The point isn't that money is the root cause of professional unhappiness. It's not. The problems start occurring when it becomes a priority over all else. When hygiene factors are satisfied but the quest remains only to make more money. Even those engaged in careers that seem to specifically focus on money, like salespeople and traders, are subject to these rules of motivation. It's just that in these professions, money acts as a highly accurate yardstick of success. Traders, for example, feel success and are motivated by being able to predict what is going to happen in the world and then making bets based on those predictions. Being right is almost directly correlated with making money. It is the confirmation that they are doing their jobs well. The measure they use to compete on. Similarly, salespeople feel success by being able to convince customers that the product or service they're selling will help those customers in their lives. Again, money directly correlates with success, a sale. It's an indicator for how well they're doing their jobs. It's not that some of us are fundamentally different beasts. We might find different things meaningful or enjoyable, but the theory still works the same for everyone. If you get motivators at work, Herzberg's theory suggests you're going to love your job, even if you're not making piles of money. You're going to be motivated. Motivation matters in places you might not expect. When you really understand what motivates people, it becomes illuminating in all kinds of situations, not just in people's careers. My two oldest children taught me an important dimension of Herzberg's theory on motivation. When we bought our first house, I saw a place in the backyard that would be perfect for building a kid's playhouse. Matthew and Anne were the perfect ages for this kind of activity, and we threw our hearts into this project. We spent weeks selecting the lumber, picking the shingles for the house, working our way up through the platform, the sides of the roof. I'd get the nails most of the way in and let them deliver the finishing blows. It took longer than that way, of course, figuring out whose turn it was for everyone's stroke of the hammer and uh, 다시, stroke off the hammer and cut off the saw. It was fun, however, to see their feelings of pride. When their friends came to play, the first things my children would do was take them into the backyard and show them the progress. And when I came home, their first question was, when could we get back to work? But after it was finished, I really saw the children in it. The truth was that having the house wasn't what really motivated them. It was the building of it and how they felt about their own contribution that they found satisfying. I had thought that the destination was what was important, but it turned out it was the journey. It is hard to overestimate the power of these motivators, the feelings to accomplishment and of learning, of being a key player on a team that is achieving something meaningful. I shudder to think that I almost bought a from which I could have quickly assembled the playhouse myself. If you find a job you love, the theory of motivation, along with its description of the roles that incentives and hygiene factors will play, has given me better understanding of how people become successful and happy in their careers. I used to think that if you cared for other people and you need to study sociologists, so 다시 I used to think that if you cared for other people, you need to study sociology or something like it. But when I compared what I imagined was happening in Diana's home after the different days in our labs, I concluded if you want to help other people be a manager, if done well, management is among the most noble of professions. You're in a position where you have 8 or 10 hours every day from every person who works for you. You have the opportunity to frame each person's work so that at the end of it, every day your employees will go home feeling like Diana felt on her good day, living a life filled with motivators. I realized that if the theory of motivation applies to me, then I need to be sure that those who work for me have the motivators too. The second realization I had is the pursuit of money can, at best, mitigate the frustration in your career. Yet the siren song of riches has confused and confounded some of the best in our society. In order to really find happiness, you need to continue looking for opportunities that you believe uh, are meaningful, in which you will be able to learn new things, to succeed, and be given more and more responsibility to show it. There's an old saying, find a job that you love and you'll never work a day in your life. People who truly love what they do and who think their work is meaningful have a distinct advantage when they arrive at work every day. They throw their best effort into their job and it makes them very good at what they do. This is this in turn Hashi, this in turn can mean they get paid well. Careers that are filled with motivators are often correlated with financial rewards. But sometimes the reverse is true too. Financial rewards can be present without the motivators. In my assessment, it is frightfully easy for us to lose our sense of the difference between what brings money and what causes happiness. You must be careful not to confuse correlation with causality in assessing the happiness we can find in different jobs. Thankfully, however, these motivators are stable across professions and over time, giving us a sense of true north, against which we can recalibrate the trajectories of our careers. We should always remember that beyond a certain point, hygiene factors such as money, status, compensation, and job security are much more a byproduct of being happy with a job rather than the cause of it. Realizing this frees us to focus on the things that really matter. For many of us, one of the easiest mistakes to make is to focus on trying to oversatisfy a tangible trapping of professional success and the mistaken belief that those things will make us happy. Better salaries, a more prestigious prestigious title, a nicer office, they are, after all, what our friends and family see as signs that we have made it professionally. But as soon as you find yourself focusing on the tangible aspects of your job, you're at risk of becoming like some of my classmates, chasing a marriage. The next pay raise you think will be the one that finally makes you happy. It's hopeless quest. The theory of motivation suggests you need to talk and ask yourself a different set of questions than most of us are used to asking. Is this work meaningful to me? Is this job going to be or give me a chance to develop? Am I going to learn new things? Will I have an opportunity for recognition or and achievement? Am I going to be given responsibility? These are the things that will truly motivate you. Once you get this right, the most measurable aspects of your job will fade in importance.